You know, the human mind is an incredible thing. It's capable of composing symphonies, designing spacecraft, and thinking about the universe itself. And yet, this same brilliant machine, it constantly jumps to conclusions. It relies on gut feelings. It often prefers the easy answer over the right one. And that's the central puzzle of our own consciousness, isn't it? This immense power paired with this deep, fundamental need to take shortcuts.
So you have to ask, why? Why is our brain always searching for the path of least resistance? Well, here's the thing. This isn't a flaw in our design. Not at all. It's a feature, one that's been born from these deep, unwritten laws that govern our biology. And today, we're going to peel back the layers of our own thinking to really understand the elegant architecture behind the brain's constant search for simplicity. To get to the bottom of this, we're going to explore 5 distinct layers. We'll start with the shortcuts themselves. Then we'll look at the mental machinery that makes them run. From there, we'll uncover the hidden biological cost of just thinking. We'll see how evolution shaped our minds for survival, not for perfection. And finally, we'll get to the brain's deepest, most fundamental law.
Okay, let's start with something we can all recognize in our daily lives, the brain's secret shortcuts. These are like these invisible rules of thumb that guide almost every decision we make, from what to have for breakfast to how we judge the character of someone we just met.
Now, the scientific term for these shortcuts is heuristics. Think of them as these tiny, super-efficient apps that are just running in the background of your brain's operating system. You don't consciously turn them on, they just activate automatically. And their job is to take really complex problems and chop them down into something manageable. Their goal isn't to be perfectly accurate. Their goal is to be fast and, well, good enough, all while using the least amount of mental energy possible.
And what's so fascinating is that these heuristics, they aren't bugs in our mental software. They're actually an incredibly elegant solution, a solution that's been refined over millions of years to solve a very ancient and very serious problem. So, what is that problem? Well, to understand that, we need to go a layer deeper and look at the actual machinery of how we think.
And that brings us to the work of Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman. He came up with this really groundbreaking model of our mind's inner workings. He described our thinking as a tale of 2 very different systems, a kind of duo that works together, but sometimes they work against each other to create our thoughts.
So on one side, you've got System 1. This is our fast thinking. It's your brain's automatic pilot. It's intuitive, it's emotional, and it feels completely effortless. It's the part of you that instantly recognizes patterns, like knowing that 2 + 2 is 4, or jumping when you hear a sudden loud noise. Then on the other side, there's System 2. This is our slow thinking. This is the conscious, deliberate, analytical part of your mind. It's the one you have to fire up when you're solving a complex math problem, trying to parallel park, or really weighing the pros and cons of a big life decision. It's incredibly powerful, but it's also slow and frankly, it's pretty lazy.
As Kahneman himself explained it, System 1 is what gives us this constant, effortless flow of impressions and gut feelings that guide our lives. System 2 is more like an auditor. It can step in, it can analyze the situation, and it can overrule System 1, but it really only does that when it absolutely has to.
Let's try a quick test. A bat and a ball cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. So how much does the ball cost? I'm willing to bet that for almost everyone listening, the number 10 cents just popped right into your head. That's your System 1 jumping to an intuitive, simple, and completely wrong answer. To get the correct answer, which is 5 cents, you have to consciously wake up your System 2, do the math, and override that really powerful gut feeling.
So here's the key takeaway. Heuristics, our mental shortcuts, they're the native language of System 1. It's the brain's default setting. But that just raises a much deeper question, right? If System 2 is the rational, logical one, why is the fast, impulsive, and often wrong System 1 running the show most of the time? Well, the answer isn't in psychology. It's in the hard currency of biology itself, energy.
And that brings us to our 3rd layer, the brain's metabolic mandate. To really get why our brain seems so lazy, we have to understand that it is, first and foremost, an organ. And it's governed by the same ruthless laws of energy conservation as every other part of our body.
Get ready for this, because this fact is just staggering. Your brain makes up only about 2% of your body weight, but it consumes a whopping 20% of your body's total energy, even when you're just sitting there doing nothing. It is, by a huge margin, the most metabolically expensive piece of equipment we own.
Seeing it like this really puts it into perspective. For every 5 calories you burn just sitting still, 1 of those is going exclusively to power those 3 pounds of tissue inside your skull. This has forced the brain to become what we call a cognitive miser,
It has evolved under immense pressure to be as energy efficient as it possibly can be.
And if you look inside that brain budget, the costs get even crazier. Just the act of seeing, just translating light into a meaningful picture of the world, takes up nearly half of the brain's entire energy budget. Processing information is biologically expensive. Period.
And this really gets to the core of the issue. Deliberate, conscious thought isn't just a metaphor. It is a physically draining activity. Firing up System 2, our slow, analytical mind, is like flooring the accelerator on a gas-guzzling V8 engine. System 1, with its automatic shortcuts, is the brain's hybrid mode. It just keeps things ticking along with the lowest possible energy draw.
And this cost is real, all the way down to the cellular level. Every time your neurons communicate or you form a new memory, you are burning huge amounts of energy. Even just keeping the support cells around your neurons alive is a major drain on the system. Again, this is not a metaphor. Thinking is a high-cost biological process, and your brain is constantly, obsessively managing its budget.
So, this metabolic reality, this energy budget, it sets the stage perfectly for our next layer, evolution. You see, the brain's architecture wasn't designed in a lab. It was forged in the brutal, unforgiving world of our ancestors, a world where energy was scarce and survival was the only thing that mattered. And this is such a critical point to understand. Natural selection doesn't give a single thought to objective truth or perfect rationality. It has one goal and one goal only: fitness. And that just means maximizing an organism's ability to survive long enough to pass on its genes. In the game of evolution, a good enough decision made right now is almost always better than a perfect decision made too late.
Just imagine an early human on the savannah. They hear a rustle in the tall grass. Now, they could engage System 2 and do a full analysis. Okay, what's the probability it's a lion versus just the wind, based on the time of day, wind speed, and recent lion sightings? Or they could use a simple System 1 heuristic. Grass rustles, I run. The first hunter, well, they become lunch. The second hunter survives to have kids. That right there is the brutal logic of evolution.
So let's look at our definition of heuristics again, but this time through that evolutionary lens. A heuristic is an approach that is simply sufficient for reaching an immediate goal. And for millions of years, that immediate goal was pretty simple: don't die today. So speed and saving energy were way more valuable for survival than slow, painstaking accuracy. And this whole process has left us with a toolkit of these time-tested shortcuts. You've got the availability heuristic, which is why we think plane crashes are more common than car crashes. Those dramatic images just pop into our heads more easily. There's the representativeness heuristic, where we make judgments based on how well something fits a stereotype in our head, and anchoring, where our decisions get stuck on the very first piece of information we hear. These are all ancient echoes of survival logic playing out in our modern lives.
But of course, there's a trade-off. For all their speed and efficiency, these shortcuts are far from perfect. They actually open the door to these predictable, systematic errors in our thinking, what we now call cognitive biases. So why would our brain rely on such a flawed system? To get the ultimate answer, we have to go to the deepest law of all.
We've gone from psychology to biology to evolution. And now we've arrived at the final, most fundamental layer of our explanation. This is a unifying theory from modern neuroscience that tries to explain not just the brain, but all living systems. It's called the free energy principle.
Okay, this is a really big idea, so stick with me. Proposed by the neuroscientist Carl Friston, the free energy principle says that your brain isn't just a passive sponge soaking up information from the world. No, it's an active prediction-making engine. It is constantly building a model of the world and then making predictions about what it's going to see, hear, and feel next. And the fundamental goal of the brain, its prime directive, is to minimize the error between its predictions and what it actually senses.
The technical term for this prediction error is surprisal, but really, it's just a fancy word for surprise. A predictable world is a low-surprise, low-energy world. An unpredictable, chaotic world is full of surprise, and that forces the brain to spend a ton of energy updating its models. So the brain's deepest, most fundamental drive is to keep surprise to an absolute minimum.
And this is where our entire journey comes full circle. If the brain is a prediction engine that's trying to minimize surprise while also saving as much energy as possible, what's the best way to do that? You guessed it, heuristics. Our mental shortcuts are the brain's most efficient, most time-tested prediction models. They let us make a quick, good enough guess about the world, which reduces surprise and uncertainty with the lowest possible metabolic cost.
So let's just connect all the dots one last time. Our gut feelings? That's just the heuristics of System 1 doing their job.
System 1 is the brain's default setting because it's so cheap to run, unlike that gas-guzzling System 2. This whole energy-saving design isn't some accident. It was carved out by millions of years of evolution, where being efficient meant you survived. And all of it, every piece, serves one deep biological command. Make the world as predictable and unsurprising as possible, so you can maintain order with the least amount of effort.
So when you think about your own mind, your tendency to procrastinate, to follow your intuition, to simplify things, you shouldn't see it as a mark of laziness.
It is, in fact, a quiet triumph of evolutionary engineering. It's a system that's been perfectly optimized to navigate an infinitely complex world with a very finite supply of energy.
It all starts with those two systems, the fast, intuitive System 1, which is our default autopilot. And that system is preferred because of the metabolic mandate, the simple fact that conscious thought is incredibly expensive.
This forces our brain to rely on heuristics, those energy-saving rules of thumb that helped our ancestors stay alive.
And ultimately, all of this serves the brain's deepest purpose, under the free energy principle, to minimize surprise and make reality predictable.
And so that leaves us with one final and pretty profound question to chew on. If our brain, the very tool we use to perceive reality, is fundamentally a prediction machine that was built for efficiency and not for absolute truth, what does that really mean for how we see the world and for who we think we are?